Hello, I'm Dr. Jennifer Heckman, and I work in the management department with the Milgard School of Business. Today I wanted to talk to you about listening skills. So what's the difference between hearing and listening? Hearing is the physical reception of sound. It's when the sound waves that are in the atmosphere hit your ear and they vibrate your eardrum and they move that hammer and anvil that are on the inside of your ear. Listening, on the other hand, is a psychological process, and it's when you attend to and assign meaning to what is heard. So think about it for a minute. If you woke up to every single sound that you physically heard during the night, you probably wouldn't get very much sleep. Attending to something is when you choose to pay attention to a sound that you hear, and that is listening. Listening is something that we actually use the most in terms of our communication skills. And unfortunately, it tends to be the skill that we are taught the least. We listen first in our lives and we use it most of the time. However, in our education, we tend to be taught writing first and reading, and then speaking and listening last. Have you received any listening classes? As a student, actually, you can spend up to 80% of your day listening. In some ways, because we don't spend much time thinking about listening or being taught good listening skills, it might not be that surprising that we're not very good at it. The good news is, though, that we can learn to be better, and it's in your interest to get better because employers are looking to hire good listeners. When you think about when you're engaged in good listening behaviors, what are you doing? On the other hand, though, what are you doing when you're listening passively? Well, it's probably not very surprising that when you are listening actively, you're active with your body and you're active with your mind. You're discovering areas of interest and you're taking responsibility both physically and psychologically for listening. You're paying attention to verbal and nonverbal communication. You're paying attention to the words that are spoken, but also body language and tone of voice. And so we know that when someone says that they're fine, that the word fine means okay, but the way someone says it might contradict what the actual word means. When you're listening passively, though, you tend to be easily bored, probably not very responsive, and maybe you're listening on and off. We aren't really engaged in the listening activity when we are listening passively, and we're apt to not really be paying attention and not making active meaning around the conversation that we're engaged in. Effective listening occurs when we use three broad categories of skills: attending, following, and reflecting. Let's walk through each of these and see how we can use these skills. First off, our attending skills. These are your physical behaviors and how you deal with your surroundings. So, your posture, the gestures you employ, and maintaining eye contact. You can also manage your environment. It's hard to have a heart-to-heart conversation and really listen closely to someone if you're in a noisy environment or where you're getting interrupted consistently. Following skills, on the other hand, are things you do to demonstrate your engagement and encourage the speaker. So you might find yourself using short vocalizations to show you're listening and encourage the speaker, such as, oh, uh-huh, or wow. Infrequent questioning is important because oftentimes questions reflect our interests and can take focus away from the speaker's needs. There's also the use of silence. Did you know that a study published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology found that in some instances, a mere 4 seconds of silence can make a conversational partner feel uncomfortable? However, rather than jumping in to fill that space, we can choose to let that silence be meaningful and let the speaker use that time to gather his or her thoughts and continue. And finally, there are reflective listening skills. These are skills that require a high level of commitment and engagement on the part of the speaker. Reflective listening is a reflective response. in which the listener restates a feeling and/or content of what the speaker has communicated, and does so in a way that demonstrates understanding and acceptance. Reflective listening is helpful when there is an emotion being expressed behind the content that is being conveyed. Now, oftentimes in business, we expect people to check their emotions at the door, but that doesn't really tend to work very well. So it's helpful to know how to deal with emotional content in conversations, even in a business setting. In paraphrasing, you check the understanding of what's being said, and it can help you eliminate any unintended meanings. In paraphrasing, you not only demonstrate your interest, but you let the speaker think about what they said, and you can encourage the speaker to explain more fully. So an example might be, as you see it, the other group members were already upset. When you reflect meanings and feelings, we can do this because we frequently miss the emotional dimension of a conversation, and we tend to focus primarily on content. This can be problematic because sometimes we use content to obscure the way that we are feeling, which is actually where the problem lies. Why respond to feelings? Because doing so promotes a more open and personal relationship, and oftentimes having a rational discussion is not possible if feelings go unaddressed. When we reflect meanings and feelings, we do so by tentatively rephrasing and naming the feeling that we believe is being expressed. When we engage in these kinds of discussions, there are actually business benefits. Organizations care about this kind of listening because there are studies that demonstrate it increases productivity, efficiency, morale, and loyalty. I personally used to work for Boeing, and while I was there, I taught both managers and employees classes in listening skills, and it was important to the organization for two reasons. First, listening mistakes cost money. UW, for example, employs over 40,000 workers. If each person made a $100 listening mistake each year, that's $4 million. Second, there are productivity and morale benefits, which I mentioned, and that's really important for running a successful business. So it's imperative that we work on our listening skills, not just for our productivity in organizations, but also so that we can be productive and more invested in our relationships professionally and personally. When you're using reflective listening skills, make sure that you're willing to talk about the issue, and the speaker is as well. Only use these kinds of listening skills when you want to be involved, and keep your checks brief. You're there to listen, and they're there to speak. You're not a psychologist, and you don't need to get involved too deeply. So to wrap up, we process a lot of information when we communicate. Our listening skills can improve. We can improve our attending skills, our following skills, and use reflective listening skills. Effective listening benefits our comprehension, our problem solving, and our relationships and organizations. Sometimes it's important to use those reflective listening skills to understand not just the content of the conversation, but the feelings as well. Thanks for your attention today, and good luck practicing those new listening skills.